I've been doing this since we left. Not really, but making my own fun over here till I know what's up.
You're live, so.
Hi, welcome to It's So Friday. This is a super special edition of It's So Friday because we are sewing with so much flannel today. I don't know about anyone else out there, but when baby season hits and everyone starts telling me that they're having a baby, isn't that exciting? It's so exciting until they look at me and go, "So you're a quilter, right? You can make me a baby quilt." And I'm over here like, "Oh, you don't even know about my stack of work in progresses. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to make all these baby quilts and make them beautiful and charming?" And we found the solution for you with this perfect baby shower bundle set. It's everything a new mom needs or wants, and it's still a lovely handmade quilted touch. All you need are your favorite flannels, plus several free patterns that we've offered here on the Robert Kaufman website, which you can find all the links to in the Facebook post or in the link that will be live on Instagram right after this. So the quilt that we'll be making is called Basic Blocks. It's a very simple quilt pattern. We will be making a simple bib, and it's so simple we called it the simple bib. So don't you worry about that one. Next, we'll have a simple burp cloth, also super simple, but super useful. Every mom with a baby will tell you that burp cloths are the things that they want the most. And last, a simple swaddle blanket. Look at that. 3 simple projects, named simple projects, and a quilt. You're in for a treat. It's really exciting. Okay, so just to give you a feel for how you can make this your own, you'll need a variety of different kinds of flannels, and Robert Kaufman has a lot of flannels. We have like some more complex flannels like our Mammoth or our Tahoe, and we have more whimsical novelty flannels like this Swan Princess or this Woodland Hideaway with sweet little bears and foxes and bunnies on it. So kind of whatever suits your needs and the needs of whoever's having this baby, you just pull what you want from there. To give you a sense for how these projects can look really different just based on what fabrics you pick, you can see this is a bib. The beauty of the bib is that it's double-sided, so you don't have to do laundry as often. You can mess up this side and then turn around and mess up this side. This is coming from someone who doesn't have a baby, obviously. Look, another 2-sided bib. So we'll make a third version of that. Now, the burp cloths, you'll see, have a lovely little shape to them. This is for your neck, so that you can kind of put it right there. It fits in the crick of your neck. And again, double-sided, half the laundry. These ones you might want to do the laundry a little bit more. A swaddle blanket is the most forgiving, easiest sewing project because it doesn't really matter how big it is. We give you the measurements, but if it ends up being a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, no one's going to mind. It's just a nice flannel double-sided rectangle with rounded corners, and it looks a lot harder than it is. And you can see there's a really cute pink version, and then this like super modern black and gray version with the dots and the stars. And then of course there's the quilts, and these are pretty quick to put together, but look at how sweet that is. And you too could make a super sweet or sophisticated, this is sophisticated, this one right here, or charming, whoa, all my notions are going flying, little quilt, super quick, all with us here as we sew. So now I have to fold everything back up. But now you know what we're sewing, so we can kind of just jump right in. And I've been thinking about where we should begin, and I thought that maybe we should talk about what you're going to need for this project. And then we can pick which project to work on. Okay, let's move this all so you can see things. My assistant, Kyle, is going to sneak in and take them all away. Okay, what you need. It's always important to have a nice little pair of snips for getting those extra little threads. These are a pair of Kai scissors. They have a really sharp point, so don't do that with it because it kind of hurts. Here's a seam ripper. Every project I sew on Sew Friday always needs a seam ripper, and every project in real life. A rotary cutter, very sharp. Make sure you keep it closed when it's not in use. An erasable pen. This is a friction pen. It erases with heat. I like it because it's a nice bright color. We'll skip this one for now. A paper plate. or a glass plate. I didn't have a glass plate because I don't keep dishes here at work, so I have a paper plate. A pin cushion with some pins is always a good idea to have on hand. And, okay, this is where we're going to get a little crazy this episode. When we work on simple bibs, it's really easy to use sew-in Velcro. However, in my personal feelings about Velcro, I don't love sewing with it. I feel like it's less fun than putting in snaps. So we're going to be using some snaps today. Now, I'm sure several of you have had experiences with these snaps, this snap handle thing, and I'm sure they weren't pleasant, so we're not going to use them. But we are going to be using cam snaps, and it looks just as scary, but it's super easy to use and really fun. And when you get a starter kit, it comes with this little, almost looks like a screwdriver, but it's actually a really sharp piece of metal here at the end. Not as sharp as your scissors, but pretty sharp still, so be careful with it. And we're going to put this little thing back on, and you'll need your snaps. Okay, now that we have all that, I think we'll start with the baby bib. I'm just going to keep my little notions aside. Now, when you download the Simple Bib and the Simple Burp Cloth pattern, you'll see there are actually two choices in how you want to do the construction. So if you're pretty confident sewing with curves, all you have to do is cut out the pattern pieces and sew around the curves. But I really love that our bib pattern has another option for you if you're a little bit intimidated sewing curves and you still want to make a bib. So first things first, we are going to iron our fabric because it's a little wrinkly. Okay, come on fabric. We're going to use some flatter spray starch alternative to help it really get those creases out. And we're using an Aliso iron. It's a smart iron, so when I touch the handle, it goes down to the ironing board, and when I let it go, it comes back up and doesn't burn the ironing board. Now, what you'll do is take your two pieces, whatever you want as your exterior and whatever you want as your interior, or your lining, not interior, and put them right sides together. Okay, now you have your pattern cut out. The pattern pieces are included in the pattern that you've downloaded from the Robert Kaufman website. You just need to tape them together on the red line. And for this method, you want to find the center of whatever you want. So if you have like a picture of a motif or something on the bib that you want centered, make sure that you get that kind of right in the center. And using your marking tool, you're just going to go ahead and just mark a straight line. So you've drawn a straight line down the center of your fabrics, and now you're going to take your bib template, it's only half a bib, and you're just going to line it up, line up the half of the bib with the line you drew, and you're going to draw. Well, you're going to trace, not draw. If you draw, you can have a bib. It just might not be our bib. But trace around the pattern. And then flip it again so it's on the opposite side of the line, but make sure that it's still lined up with the sides that you just drew. And again, trace your pattern. Oh, and if anyone has any questions while I'm doing this, please feel free to ask. We have several people here in the office that are just looking forward to reading out your questions and having them answered live on air. It's really exciting for us.
Got a compliment on your shirt.
Oh, thank you. It's soft. Okay. Now, once you've traced your pieces, you should have what looks like a bib-ish on your one of your pieces on the back of the piece. Now, all you have to do is sew on that line that you just drew. But there's more. Make sure that you leave a few inches, probably at the bottom of the bib, for turning so that you can turn it back right side out. So what I'm doing is I just drew two lines, and that's where I'm going to start and stop. And so now I'm just taking this over to my machine, and I'm going to just take a few stitches forward and backwards, and then going slow or going fast, however you're comfortable, sew on the line. Now this method will use a little bit more fabric than if you were to just cut the template out directly, but it's super great if you're a beginner and you're a little nervous to go around those curves. And when you take a turn, just make sure that you're moving slow and just giving yourself time. And if you don't sew directly on the line, it's okay because it's for a baby and they're not too picky. Okay. We're turning the curves here. Okay.
So we've got some latecomers asking what you're making. So.
Oh, we are making the perfect baby shower bundle. So it's a bib, a burp cloth, a simple swaddle, and a basic quilt. And you can take any one of these and make a whole bunch, or just make one, and you would be kind of the best friend ever at the baby shower. When my sister-in-law had her baby, I made burp cloths, and everyone wanted to know where the burp cloths came from, because apparently babies use them a lot. Okay, so at this point, and you can see it better on this side, we've now sewed along our shape of a bib. You can see it outlined here with a little hole at the bottom for turning. And what we're going to do is, using our scissors, which are over there, the yellow scissors, sorry. Using our scissors, which you're also going to want, you're going to cut around the lines that you just drew. Thank you. Now be careful not to cut into your sewing line, and make sure you leave at least a 1/4 inch around away from, or cut at least a 1/4 inch away from your stitch line. If you're really confident, you can use a rotary cutter to do this, but I feel like a lot of times if you're newer to sewing, sometimes it's a little intimidating to use your rotary cutter, and you can achieve the same look without it. Now the reason that you want to still leave a 1/4 inch is because that's your seam allowance. So if you're new to sewing, seam allowances are really important, because if the fabric frays at all over time, it frays into that seam allowance, but then won't go into your final project. When I first started quilting, I didn't think seam allowances were important. I thought, what the heck? And so my first quilt has a lot of seams that are popping open. Okay, so you'll have this like weird excess fabric. Just go ahead and throw that right in the trash.
So we have a question. We can watch this later, and it'll be posted to our Instagram page. So we will indeed. Your mic, so if you want to say that.
Oh, okay. The question was, will this video be available later? It will be. It will be live on, well, not live, but it'll be played again on our Instagram for the next 24 hours, and then it will live on our Facebook page as well.
And then we had a question, when to clip and when to bitch, but apparently it's when to notch. Autocorrect.
Okay, so the question was when to clip and notch, and the rule, I think, is supposed to be, well, I don't know if there's a difference between clipping and notching. I don't really know it. I just kind of always notch, which is where I sew where I cut a little V out, which helps the fabric sit flat when you turn. If you don't do that and you're like making a shirt collar, all of a sudden your shirt collar is really aggressively hitting you. So I kind of only like to do it on the tight inside curves here, around the inside of the bib. And so all you do is, now that you've cut out this lovely bib shape, you're going to just clip close to, but do not clip into the seam allowance. I usually leave about 1/8 of an inch away. And you're making these little V's. They're like tiny cutouts. They're hard to see. And I don't know if there's like a rule for how many you should cut, but I'm only going to cut maybe like 7. Kind of feel like you can make it up as you go along. And the beauty of a baby bib is that they outgrow them after a while, so it's not like it has to live for like 100 years. Okay, so we're clipping these notches. Okay, so now we have this bib with these little notches, and we are going to turn the bib right side out. So you had left this hole in the bottom of the bib, and now you just are going to push the fabric through it. And be careful not to like push too hard. Don't push with scissors. You know, you want to make sure that that you don't poke a hole in your bib. And you just, whoa, that sound was not great. That's okay. Okay, it can be really helpful to have a chopstick or something right here. I don't even have a pen or anything. Oh, I do have a pen. Ooh, I can use the pen.
If you want to reiterate that the patterns available on the website for all of these, there are
Yes,
4 separate patterns.
So each one of these patterns is available on the Robert Kaufman website for free. There are 4 separate patterns. The links for each will be included in the Facebook post. They are the simple bib, the simple swaddle, the simple baby burp cloth, or the simple burp cloth, not just for babies, and the basic blocks quilt. All right, now once you've turned your bib, you have a bib with an opening at the bottom. And so all you have to do now is gently tuck the opening in about 1/4 inch, which was about what your seam allowance was, or exactly what your seam allowance was, depending on how good of a job you did cutting exactly 1/4 inch away from the line, or if you cut it out the first time. Where did I put those pins? Sewing on your seam allowance, and just give it a little pin or two. If you have Wonder clips, you can clip it shut instead of pinning.
I have a question about the fabric, whether it's regular cotton or coated.
This is actually flannel, so it's this like lovely soft, feels nice on your face. Careful with the pins, I didn't put it on my face. Okay, now you will be sewing around the entire outside of this, so what you want to do is kind of pull using your little fingernails to make sure that you're getting all of the lining or anything that's tucked into the lining exactly flush here. This may be like a little gross, but whatever. When I'm at home and I'm doing this and it's frustrating and I can't quite get a grip, I lick my finger a little bit and then wiggle it back and forth until I know that it's just right. And that's the beauty of a handmade gift. So,
Thumbs up for that, I think.
it's a real thing, okay? All right, so now we are going to sew all the way around. I like to start at the place at the bottom where you left the turning hole and just go back and forth. I like to sew with the front of the bib facing me so that I can tell that it looks nice on the front, because if it looks a little wonky on the back, that's okay. The baby won't judge you. And that's why it's a great first project, because babies are just going to spill food all the way down the front of this, and like milk, and I don't even know what else. Babies are messy. They're really cute. They look really cute in the bibs you make them. Okay. And another incentive for downloading that cute bib pattern, that cute model in the bib, is my nephew. And he's precious. And I love him. Okay.
Support saying it's not gross, and what happens in the sewing room.
I'm glad that you all understand, because that's the struggle, okay? Glad. It is easy to get used to. It's important that the sewing table is the right height for you. So this is a perfect table actually for cutting. It's just the right height where I have a lot of control over the ruler and the rotary cutter. It's probably just a tad too low to be a permanent standing sewing station, but for little projects and stuff like this, it's not bad at all. You just, anytime you're using a permanent standing station, you want to make sure that it's at the right height for you so that you're not like hunched over at the end of the day.
Question about decorative top stitch. Would you ever?
Ooh, you could. I've never really used my decorative top stitch, but it is a really great opportunity to do that. You could put some little flowers, or let me look at what the decorative top stitches are. There's flowers, there's scroll work, there's all kinds of stuff. This would be the perfect place to do that. After you've top stitched all the way around, you have a bib, except there's no way to close it. So this one's a little small for my neck, but fits babies. If you wanted, you could now sew on some Velcro, but we are going to go crazy and use snaps. So cam snaps, K-A-M, they are super easy to apply. They don't require a lot of like wrist pressure or anything. It looks super intimidating, but it's not, I promise. So I'll show you how easy it is. All you need is the tool, the little punch, and you need the right pieces of the snap. So you will need 2 pieces with the sharp point, which are flat and cute on the other side. All right, so there's 2 of those. You will need 1 piece that has a pop up, and you will need 1 piece, and you won't really be able to see this, but 1 piece, whoa. 1 piece that has a pop in. So these will snap together, and there'll be a really satisfying click, but I'm not going to do it now because it's really hard to take them apart if you don't have a lot of fingernails going on. So the best part about this bib is it's reversible. So first things first, just put 1 in. Doesn't really matter. Take your metal piece and just kind of eyeball it, you know, and you're going to puncture a hole. So just to give you a visual, that actually goes straight through the fabric. It's super easy. not a lot of resistance. Then you take one of the pieces with the sharp plastic piece up and push it through, and take either of the pieces, it doesn't matter, and put it in the hole. So it's important that you don't put it in backwards, and you'll know because if you put it in backwards, it won't really work. It needs to have a little piece of the metal still pushing up so that you can use the tool to close it. Now, for this tool, you're going to nest in the black space here, the round bottom of the snap, and make sure that it's centered in the middle, because there's a piece of metal that pushes down, and if you don't center it correctly, it will it'll crack the plastic in the snap, which isn't super fun. Then you just squeeze, and look at that. Your snap is in. That was easy. It's so easy, and they're really addicting, and they come in a lot of colors. So I'm just saying, you're going to be addicted. Now make another hole on the opposite side. And now this time you have to be a little more mindful of how it's going to go together. So if your bib is going like this, that means that the other side to the snap needs to be facing up, which means that the sharp side, hello again, needs to be on the bottom. Okay, where did it go? All right, so you can see we've got our snap, and then you just again put the corresponding piece here. Make sure that it's lined up in the little, whoa, hey snap, not cool. It can be helpful not to do this in the air. This is flat on the bottom, so you can rest it on your table. And make sure it's in there, and then just squeeze, and now your snap is applied. So it looks really cute on the bib, looks very professional and polished, and snaps with a really satisfying little click. The other thing I found is that these little snaps are not super hard to take apart, so they don't like rip apart your fabric, which is really nice. And there you have it. That's how easy it is to make a basic baby bib. Now, we're going to do, oh, everyone loves a baby bib, yay! Snap.
For our Instagram camera. Oh, and Facebook. Wonderful. They're called cam snaps.
With a K, K-A-M, and so many colors.
Elizabeth likes to use.
They are. I have a lot at home.
On Amazon, I think.
But I don't know.
I'm sure there are other kinds as well that are just as good.
Okay, so that's your basic bib, and it's super cute and really helpful. Now, that snap is probably the most complicated thing we're going to do today, honestly. It's not hard, but it looks hard, and that's the best kind of sewing trick, because then everyone is like, wow, you did that. And you're just over here like, oh, I know, it's so much work, but it looks good. All right, now the other way that you could make the bib, you could make the swaddle the exact same way you just made the bib. You lay out your pieces, you would trace the pattern piece, sew on the lines. But the other way that you could do both of these patterns is to print out your pattern piece. And this one you need to fold the fabric and then cut on the fold, which we did, which means that you actually get a piece that looks like this. And so we are going to cut the second pattern piece here. Now, if you're working with a fabric that's a plaid or has a direction or a stripe, it can be really obvious if you're not lined up straight. And so like the whole fabric could like shift to the left a little bit. So all you have to do is fold directly on the line. So it's easier to see here how there's a gray stripe kind of going. And so I folded right on that stripe, and I'm just going to give it a quick press. And that's going to be the line that you line up your pattern on. And that way, when you cut your piece, you'll know that your fabric is going to have that nice straight grain to it. Okay. And then again, I'm going to use my marking tool to mark my pattern piece. Okay. And this time, instead of using my scissors, we're going to go crazy. We're going to use the rotary cutter to cut this out. This is if you're feeling really confident. Sometimes you sneeze or something and then you have to recut. But overall, I feel like if you take it slow, sometimes it's easier and faster just to rotary cut out your pattern pieces. Oh, I forgot to change out my rotary cutter blade. I have to do that. It's snagging a little bit. That's how you know it's time. Okay, I even bought new blades. Anyone else ever do that? Accidentally leave your rotary blade in way too long. I know I'm not alone out here. Okay. So now you have your two pieces. All you need to do is put them right sides together. And this one, if you have like a fabric, this one has directionality with words. Maybe you're like trying to get the baby to learn at a really early age how to read. It's a good way to do it. Okay, line your pieces up, and then you're just going to sew all the way around using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which means we have to move our needle all the way back over to the 1/4 inch right now, or before I had it centered since I was just drawing on the line. Again, leave about a 4 inch or 3 inch-ish hole for turning, and you're just going to sew. If you have a knee lift when you're turning curves, it can be really good to use. The trick kind of is to leave your needle in the down position and then barely raise the foot lever just a little bit. Like this is raising fully, but if I hold on to it and just raise it a little bit as I turn a curve, I don't ever raise it like while I'm sewing, but that little adjustment lets you sew more like straight stitches. Let me make sure I left a spot. Yeah, it lets you sew straight lines basically instead of trying to wrangle a curve. But if your fabric is complying, you could even just kind of turn it. I just did there. That was exciting. Okay, now it's okay if your pieces don't line up completely, so if they're not exactly the same, you just need to sew in a 1/4 inch inside the smallest piece because it's just going to make the burp cloth just like a little bit smaller. But again, babies are really forgiving. They don't care. So you can see here my bottom fabric maybe went out just a little bit more. That's okay. Again, just reach in, grab the pieces here, and turn. Now, you might find when you sew with flannel that your machine gets a little fuzzy a little faster. I can actually see little bits of fuzz flying in the air, so you can get a little more sneezy than normal cotton when you're sewing with flannel. But flannel quilts and flannel projects are delightful because they are so, so warm. And I had never understood the need for a flannel quilt because I grew up in Southern California and I'd never seen snow and didn't really know that that was a thing. And then I went to Oregon in the winter, and let me tell you, flannel quilts, that's where it's at. So, again, using your lick your finger real quick trick, go ahead and make sure that the edges are pulled all the way out. And then you're going to, again, top stitch around the edges. I like to top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. That means that I'm definitely catching that 1/4 inch seam. If you sew too far away, then at the bottom where you've turned, you won't catch the entire seam and it won't be shut, which is a problem. You do need it to stay shut. All right, and now we stitch. I learned when my sister-in-law had her baby that burp cloths are like gold for new moms and that everyone wants burp cloths. And they're such a fast sew. So if you find out about a baby shower like a week before and you just make a couple burp cloths every night, you could give her a small treasure trove and you'd be a popular person. Or if you're having a baby, I'm just assuming everyone's going to parties, but if you're having a baby, this is a really easy thing to sew up for yourself too. Okay, so we've stitched all the way around, and you can give it a press or you don't have to, but you could give it a press and then you could fold it all up and add it to the party and the gift, and look at that. We've got ourselves a burp cloth. Okay. Now the great thing about flannel is that they're very absorbent, so they do kind of pick everything up and then they're easy to wash, which is excellent. Now the next thing in our little packet of fun here is a simple swaddle. Now these are great because everyone knows that babies like to crawl around when they get a little bit bigger, or they like to lay down on quilts. So having lots of blankets is really great for them, and having quilts is really great, but it's hard to make a lot of quilts, but you could make a lot of swaddles very quickly. Now, the process is the exact same as it was for the bib and the burp cloth, where you literally just two pieces right side together, sew along the edges, flip it inside out. But it's much larger, so the scale is a lot bigger. We have you cut 1 yard and 1/4, so 1 1/4 yards, I don't know why I said it like that, of a fabric, which is this. And then we show you how to round the corners. So I'll show you how I like to round the corners. I've got these pieces lined up together. I know they're the same size because I cut them off camera, so I know I didn't make a mistake. And all right. Now, like I said, dinner plate or paper plate, if that's what you have. Put your two pieces together and making sure that you've got your, making sure it's lined up so that one piece isn't out further than the other. Just lay the corner out where you're going to work. Now this is 4 pieces together, which means it's the either 2 corners, it looks like it'll be the bottom 2 corners, and my lovely assistant Yael is going to come take away my snaps.
I didn't know. Oh, you, okay.
Okay. And here's where the paper plate comes into handy. What you're going to do is lay the plate down, and you're going to trace the edge, and that's where you're going to cut. So I am going to just trace this edge. And it doesn't have to be like super precise, but once you make that edge, just kind of go for it. Cut it off. Now don't even worry that you still have selvages on this. That's okay, because we're just going to use a bigger seam allowance and sew right over them. Keep them all on the inside, saves you from doing a little bit more cutting. Okay, let's move all this. So, now that you've rounded your corners, whoa, that iron almost got my seam ripper. Did you see that? All right, you're going to put your pieces right sides together. They're such big pieces. Okay. Now, this is probably a project where you'd like to pin. I don't like pinning, but it is a project that would maybe benefit from some pinning. So we're going to pin a little bit. I might need more pins, we'll see. And I'm going to pin at the start of each of the corners, maybe not through the whole corner, but just a quick pin to keep it in place. And then I'm going to pin again as I go along the sides. Now you'll be sewing 3 complete sides closed and leaving one that has a little bit of a room for turning in it.
Speaking of pins, have you told the lovely people about your pin on your collar there?
I have a pin. I Instagram storied about it. It's a little brooch of a tiny little leprechaun. I love him so much. I found him at an estate sale a long time ago. I only wear him once a year, obviously, on St. Patrick's Day. And I was so excited when I woke up this morning, because when I looked at my phone, one of my friends sent me a text and she was like, "Green donuts at Krispy Kreme, it's happening at St. Patrick's." And I was like, awesome, it's Leprechaun Pin Day. So I got dressed and I put on my leprechaun pin and I wore a shirt with green on it so no one could pinch me, and I went out to leave and I said, "Oh my gosh, honey, look, my leprechaun pin, it's Leprechaun Pin Day." And he looked at me and he said, "That's tomorrow." So that happened. But I guess I will just be wearing him again tomorrow. He's so cute. He's like, you can't see him, but he's like, he's got his legs crossed and he's like this, and he's got a red beard and a green hat and a green outfit. And he's sitting in some four-leaf clovers. He's got little black shoes with little gold buckles on them. And I think he's just saying, "Have a good day." I really like him. It's kind of a sad story. But I guess it's happy because I'll wear it again tomorrow. It's like I got to wear him 2 days this year. That's pretty cool. All right, so we're going to be pinning for a long time. We're going to be pinning forever. We're actually halfway done, but it feels like forever, doesn't it? It does. Okay. Oh my God. All right. Now, if you're brave, you could just sew it without pinning. I feel like if I were to sew it without pinning while we were live on camera, though, something would go wrong, and then I'd have to get out the seam ripper, and it would just be like one of those things. So I'm not going to risk it. But again, with this doesn't have to be super precise because it's for a baby, and they're so forgiving. I really love babies. Yeah, they'll also throw up on this. All right, we are to our last side. I'm going to make do with all the pins I have. I'm not getting more. Thank you, though. Okay. Something went wrong with my pinning. You can see because it's like way too much fabric on this side. That's why you pin those, so that you know what's going on with this. Like, why is this edge so much bigger than the other one? All right. So, I like to start my sewing on one of the edges with the selvage because I want to make sure that I'm catching the whole selvage. Now, since this side doesn't really have a visible selvage, it's just like blue plaid all the way up to the edge, but this one does have that white line that you can see. I'm going to sew on that side first, and I'm going to leave room for turning on this side. So I don't really know. It's looking a little poofy on this, and I feel like I should fix that. I don't know why it's doing that. So let's look at maybe. All right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start sewing here. Okay, now on this project, it could be good to use like a 5/8 inch seam allowance because that should cover the whole selvage. But if you need to be like a little bit more generous, just be a little more generous. That's okay. No one minds. The babies are so nice. Okay. Now when you get to pins, don't sew over pins. That could be dangerous. They could break. They could snap off in your face, and that is really not a super pleasant experience. It's like really scary actually when it happens. Yeah. All right, so we are sewing, and we are going to see what's going on here. Okay. And now we're turning a corner. Now the nice thing about this project is that that curve is so gentle, so you really don't have to do anything crazy to try and it's not like the bib has more of an aggressive curve. This one's very smooth. It just feels like you're still sewing a straight line. I guess you are sewing a straight line, you're just manipulating it. It's all straight lines. All right, so we're going. If you have a machine that sews super fast, this will be done so fast. If you have a machine that sews a little slower, this will still be done so fast because it's really quick. Now, I can tell that I didn't pin great because I'm getting little bubbles of fabric. So like my presser foot is pushing my fabric forward and it's starting to bubble a little bit before it gets there. And so I am just going with it. I'm going to I'm still going to line my corners up. I'm just going to kind of push the excess fabric to the inside. Because flannel clings to itself, so eventually it'll all be okay. All right, turned corner number 2, 2 more to go. And we're back to the other side with selvage. This side, the selvage is not white. It doesn't have a white line, so you can kind of sew a little bit closer to the edge. You're not going to be worried about catching that in your swaddle. Okay. And, you know, if you're feeling adventurous, you could make a really big swaddle because these would be really great for just having on the couch, or like for a puppy, or for a grown dog who thinks she's a puppy. You know, basically, pets can also appreciate the soft flannel fabrics too. My dog thinks that my quilted pillows are all for her. I come home and she's sleeping on them. I'm like, what do you think you're doing? I still love you. You're lucky. It's less that she sleeps on them and more that she licks them all. And you're like, stop. It's so gross. Dogs are gross. Okay. Okay. So. We're turning what may be the last curve. Yeah, we're back to the side where we started. So we've just turned the last curve. It's kind of like rounding third base, heading to home. I don't know if that's the right, but I think it is. So, all right. Okay. And this is again one where you are leaving a space for turning. So stop, and you have a little pocket, and we're just going to reach in. Oh my gosh. Okay. Reach in and ha ha, like magic. Okay. Now it helps to kind of grab the corners to make sure the flannel is popping all the way out. And okay, so we're doing this. The finger licking trick really works, guys. It's really hard to do. There are little like bobkins and stuff. There's a purple tool called That Purple Thing, which I love, and it really is helpful for this kind of project. So you can kind of run it along the inside of the seams, and it helps push the fabric out. But it also just means like you have to be a little patient. Ooh. And of course, this feels like it's just like this massive thing. It's going to take a long time to do, but we're going to get through it. Mostly because if it took forever, we would have to call it like sew every day of the week, because it would take longer than Friday. But this is Sew Friday, so we're going to sew it on Friday. Okay. I think we're almost back to yes, we're back to the spot where we turned it from. That's good. Oh, look, I entirely missed this corner. Okay. And some of this you can actually do as you're sewing. So, don't worry. Okay. We're going to go back to, where was it? Maybe it wasn't that side. Find the spot where you turned. Oh, it was this side. Whoa, hi seam ripper, we don't need you right now. And turn in by about 1/2 inch, which is about what our seam allowance was here. And then we're going to stitch all the way around. Hang on, lining things up here. And we're just going to go on a slow, nice stitch around the quilt. Taking your time as you go to make sure the fabrics are both pulled all the way out. And if it's not totally perfect, like the lesson that we've learned this whole episode is that babies don't care. So babies are great to give presents to because they just love everything. Okay. All right, we're turning the curve. Now I didn't read the pattern exactly, so it might tell you to trim your seam allowances down, or it might tell you to sew with like a smaller seam allowance, but the kind of rule of thumb is just get sew with whatever seam allowance is going to work for you to not have to deal with cutting off those selvages, because that's just a headache. And sew with what makes you comfortable. If it turns out just a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, that's okay. It's kind of exactly like quilting, where sizes are not set. You can make it whatever you want, and that's the beauty of it. Saying okay, all right, but it's just because I'm like encouraging myself, like, yeah, this is so good, we're almost done, keep going. So. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I think I was going to say it earlier and I just forgot. I'm pretty excited because this is the very first So Friday episode where we have a lavalier mic, and that means that it should be an easier listening experience for you. You should be able to hear me a little bit better, even over the roar of the sewing machine. Well, this one's more like a gentle purr, like a little house cat that's really happy and just wants some treats. But, you know.
On Facebook, at least. On Instagram, a lot of people are saying that your sound is getting low, actually.
Oh, because I have a lavalier mic, I don't have to talk as loud. It's kind of fun. Sorry about that, guys. On Facebook, you can hear me really clearly because my microphone's like right next to me. What size what?
Sewing a 1/4 inch around the blanket?
I'm sewing a little more, like a generous 1/8 away from the edge. But if you've used a more aggressive seam allowance, you could sew further in. So on the bib, when you only have a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, you want to really stick to that 1/8, because what'll happen is you've got it turned under, let's see, visual. You've got the stuff turned under maybe this much. This is a bad example because it's hard to see, but if you've got your bib turned under and pressed and then you top stitch along this edge really close, you're going to keep this seam down and closed. Now, if you have it turned under this much, you could sew it all the way over here. It's still going to catch all those edges. The only thing that'll happen though is that these edges will kind of poof out because just at the turning hole. So that's why it's nice to sew closer to the edge, like about an 1/8. But again, it's not like a total science. So if on some places it's kind of like, whoa, it's okay too. Babies are so forgiving. So on Facebook, the sound is great, which is good. We're having a good time with it. Well, I really like it because before the show, it means I can't really move. And I'm like, do you see that seam ripper over there? I have to ask people to go get it. All right, we are actually almost done. We have cam snaps and the setting tool. There was a question on if I mentioned some kind of tool. Oh, that purple thing. It's actually Thang, T-H-A-N-G. It's great. It's this little piece of purple plastic that's pointy on one end and has like a square on the other end, and it's like $3 at your little quilt shop. It's almost silly. It took me years to buy one, and now I have like 8 because I lose them. But it's just useful for pushing out corners or like anything that you kind of just need when I need to like poke something in my sewing machine. I use that. I think on the packaging it even says like 1,000 uses, and it's just it's a nice little tool to have around. We are so close to done. Okay, I can see the stitching. I'm just going to go, whoa. I'm just going to go back and cut it off. And just like that, you have a beautiful, simple swaddle. Now, someone, there's clapping in the audience. Like the local audience, not the everywhere else audience. The great thing about flannel, like I was saying earlier, is that it clings to itself. So you don't really have to like add quilting through here to keep it together. You can if you want, but it's not super important. And that is just a very, very simple swaddle that you can make real quick and looks great in addition to a basket that you're putting together for a friend or for yourself. So you have a swaddle and a bib and a burp cloth, and you're feeling really good about yourself, and you have some extra time, and so you think, oh, I really want to make that quilt.
So both sides are flannel?
Yeah, both sides are flannel. Now these are different kinds of flannel. So if you're working with different weights of flannel, it's really important to just be really careful that they might stretch at different rates. This is more important when you're working on a quilt, and only if you really want all your seams to be perfect. So you'll just want to be very careful when you piece, and flannel will shift just a little bit differently than a quilting cotton will. So you'll also want to make sure just take care with your seams and maybe adjust the pressure down on your foot if you can, so that it's not putting as much pressure. Otherwise, your presser foot will push the flannel a little more aggressively, and it might shift a bit. So you want to make a quilt. There are a few different ways you can piece this, but based on our pattern, you would just cut your squares 2 3/4 inch by 3 3/4 inch. And you need 4 of one and 4 of a complementing one to make one block in the quilt. And all you're going to do is lay them out in kind of a step pattern. And if they have directionality, make sure you're paying attention to that. Unless you don't care, then don't pay attention to that. But if you care and you want everyone's head to be up here and the bodies to be down here, make sure that you look at that when you're lining them up. And so you can see you're just going to sew like this, and all you have to do is put the right sides together and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now,
Question about recommending pre-washing for shrinkage on flannel, and I would say yes, because shrinkage is
more on
then,
flannel.
Yeah, and just to be sure.
So there is a question about should you pre-wash flannel because it will shrink. Yes, you should if you have time. Because flannel does shrink. If you're using, if you really like crinkly quilts and you want that look, then maybe you don't. Maybe you're risky. But it might actually make it easier for you to cut everything and make sure that it's not weird sizing if it has been pre-washed and isn't shifting around as much. Okay, so I am sewing these one at a time by rows using a 1/4 inch, and if you wanted to, you could chain piece, but when I was making the quilts before, what I found was that I got a little like confused or sidetracked on which pieces went where sometimes, and so I kept moving them around. So it kind of just helped me to just go in order, piece them like this. All right. And just like any other chain piecing, you want to press, or any other piecing, you want to press all the same direction. So I'm going to press all of my seams to the gray words. And what that is going to do is that they will nest really nicely when it's time to assemble the finished quilt. Okay. So now that you've got your little guys all laid out nicely, now you just flip the rows so that the rows are right sides together, and go ahead and sew. And I am starting and stopping at the beginning of these seams, just because I don't want it to start coming unraveled or whatever. It just makes your life a little easier later. And give it a little press. Now, what I mentioned about flannel shifting just a little bit, You can see that that center point, even with the, when I nested it, it still is off just like a hair. I don't think it matters that much because I think babies are really forgiving. But if it bothers you, you could pin, but it's a lot to pin. So I pinned less on individual blocks like this and more just when I was assembling rows so that the rows look nice all together. And if it's a little bit off, I think flannel kind of has a little bit more poof and it doesn't look like that, whereas like with the quilting cotton you would really see it. So I think that it's okay, but use your best judgment and sew as desired. And if anyone were to ever say anything about it, you could just call it a design decision because you are the boss of your own quilts. No one can tell you otherwise.
Or ask the closest baby and see.
The other, yeah, so my boss Kyle over here has a really good idea. If you are wondering if someone's going to judge your points, you just grab a baby. Maybe don't actually grab a baby, but find a baby in a stroller and be like, what do you think? And I bet you they'll just be like, which is baby for, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You should do that more often. So, yeah, that's what I think about that. All right, we are sewing our last bit together. Now, sewing with flannel sometimes can feel like it's a little bit more slow going just because you do need to pin a little bit more or you want to take a little bit more time and care. But the end results are so nice and soft and fun, and you just are going to want to cuddle up with them. And I know you're going to want to, but just don't take the quilt from the baby because the babies really like the quilts too. So this is a block. If you do it a bunch more times, you'll have a sweet little quilt. And if you give them a quilt, they'll ask for a swaddle. Wait, let's see if I can land them all. And then if you give them a swaddle, you're going to want a burp cloth. And then you're just going to want a little bib that doesn't fit around my giant neck. But now imagine this like wrapped up as a gift. Doesn't that just say, like, it's handmade. I gave you my time. And that, whoa, is the simple baby, the complex, awesome, amazing, but really actually very easy baby bundle that you're going to put together for yourself or your friends. And yeah, the quilt altogether you could probably finish in like maybe 5 hours total, from like cutting to sewing to quilting and binding. And my only tip on the quilt then is that when I bind with flannel, I like to give myself a more generous binding piece to begin with because it seems like the bulk in the seams is a little bigger, and so it's easier to wrap around a piece that's like 2.5 inches to start rather than 2.25. And with baby quilts, I like to machine bind my binding down because babies are forgiving, but they are hard on their stuff. So you will be washing it a lot. And with that, that's our It's So Friday. So check out our flannels, check out the patterns, and we hope to see some of your projects using our hashtag It's So Friday hashtag on Instagram or here on Facebook. Bye. Maybe this bib will fit me. Oh, this one fits me. It's a nice bib. Are we still live?